The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para-X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
Well, it's been quite a summer so far, huh, Phil?
Yes, it has.
We've been really busy.
We have been busy, yeah.
Yeah, we did that interview with Bill Reap.
Yeah.
Selma.
Yeah.
Selma, not Selma, Alabama, Selma. Selma, Norristown.
Yeah.
Selma Mansion. Yeah, Selma was pretty cool. Bill Reap put it together with Reap Investigations. We were up there for 2 days. Horror author P.D. Kasak was up with us, and Trish hung out and, got to know the people and shared some ghost stories. We went around and interviewed a lot of people. We have some amazing content coming up from our time at Selma, and just got to know a lot of the paranormal community right around Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and got some ghost stories, some folklore, and met some cool people. It was great. I got to sell a bunch of copies of Mercy and Andy and set up my table real nice, and I'm glad we went out and did the event. But those will be coming up on episodes this summer. We got so much cool material. I can't wait. And then we talked with Dave Brawler.
Mm-hmm.
He was great.
Yeah, he was great.
He was talented, a musician. I didn't expect that.
No, I didn't either.
We didn't know what to expect when he sort of got in contact with us, because he was playing his story close to the chest.
Mm-hmm, right.
So I didn't know if he was going to get on and just make fun of us or something. But that was worth 2 episodes.
It was.
His stories were great.
That from the comic book store.
Yeah, right. We were hanging out, and the Green Ant was behind us.
The Green Ant was behind us, yes.
The Green Ant! He does that finger thing.
The finger of the Green Ant.
The Green Ant, yeah.
The wrestler, yeah.
Well, we've been doing a lot of paranormal, and we're going to change tracks from that. Mm-hmm. To talk about some writing stuff tonight.
Yes, we are.
We do have a ghost story from David Walton.
Yeah, we do.
We'll slip that in. And we have some other incredible fiction tonight, but this is episode 89, Imprisoned Spirit.
Yes, it is.
89, can you believe it?
No, I can't.
I think everything over 75 has been, can you believe it?
No. 11 more to go to 100.
Oh, but I know, we're getting there. 100 ghosts.
That's
100
right.
Ghost stories.
That's right.
We've got a great story from Mark Slade. Mark does another show on Para-X Radio at like midnight, Twilight Zone kind of show that's really quite cool. The show is a noir audio drama on Saturday nights at midnight. It's also on Anchor, and it's called Blood Noir, and it's just really quite a good show, and Mark's very talented in creating this wonderful old spirited radio drama, so check that out on Saturday nights on Para-X Radio. And he did a story called The Auction, which he put together and produced and narrated, and Mark gave it to us for the show so we could do some ghost stories, some crime writing, some horror stuff, the usual mix at What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show, where we're basically a dark magazine. But before that, and before our interview with Chris Roy, we have another ghost story that was researched and put together by our great British folk singer, David Walton, who's also Brendan Shoreland on Second Life. He's a wonderful singer, a talented narrator, and we're so grateful that he went out and collected these ghost stories for us. And this is another ghost story from him called Hanover Road, read by David Walton on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Parax Radio on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and also available at all major podcast download services. And we'll be back after this with part 1 of our interview with Christopher Roy.
An horrific haunting in Hanover Road. An extract from The Ghosts of Exeter by Sally and Chips Barber, published in 1990, and read with permission from Obelisk Publications by David Walton. Hanover Road runs along the south side of the Higher Cemetery and is the location of a very persistent haunting. Although the family had lived in the house for quite a few years, strange things only began to happen fairly recently, and seemed to coincide with the introduction of a shillelagh, an ancient Irish weapon, considered by some to be a lucky charm. Initially, they were fairly innocuous happenings, feelings of a presence upstairs, footsteps heard upstairs when everyone was downstairs, closed doors opening themselves, and a family cat that was inexplicably turning into a nervous wreck. Then more sinister things began to happen. The household consisted of a mother, father, and 2 grown-up daughters. Each daughter had her own bedroom. One night at about 3 a.m, the mother noticed a light on the landing and assumed that it was one of the daughters visiting the bathroom. She was puzzled at the length of time it was on, and that there were no associated noises of toilets flushing or doors opening and closing. When the light finally went out, it didn't so much get turned off as faded to dark when they didn't have any dimmer switches in the house. To satisfy her curiosity, the mother looked in on her daughters to discover that they were both in a deep, sound sleep. A few weeks later, and again at about 3 a.m, one of the girls was suddenly awoken. She was perspiring heavily, yet chilled to the bone by the frightening experience she then endured. A bright light shone directly into her face, whilst an unseen force pinned her down into the bed. The immense pressure was accompanied by a burning sensation, and she was unable to speak. Henry, their dog, was in the room with her. He barked wildly and then crawled underneath the bed. A short while later, the light and pressure both vanished, and she was able to call for help. The rest of the family laughed off the event and suggested that she may have had too much to drink, an accusation she vehemently denied. After a few more days, the terrifying experience was repeated, and this time there were distinct red marks on her ankles where she had felt pinned down, giving some weight of evidence to her claim. She refused to sleep there again, and so she and her father swapped places. He decided to take the cat in with him, but was taken aback at the strenuous efforts made by their pet to decline the invitation. The cat went straight into the corner underneath the bed and was found standing on her back legs, with her paws spread open, eyes as large as saucers, and her fur standing up on end like the prickles of a hedgehog. Dad occupied his daughter's bedroom for 3 weeks, during which time he endured the unwelcome visitation twice and experienced exactly the same sensations. On the second occasion, he sensed that the visitor was trying to speak, but heard nothing coherent.
What happens to a ghost when their home is torn down? No one thinks of the disembodied when they rip down old buildings, dig up cemeteries, and build clean, unhauntable condos. Every year, hundreds of spirits are driven out of their own haunts by the careless living to exist alone with no one to scare. At Parax Radio, our hosts feel the plight of these evicted disembodied, and we're reaching out to you to please open your heart to one of these lost souls such as the ghost soldier of the General Wayne Inn or the abandoned spirit cat of Benjamin Rush. So please, please, let a little spooky into your life. Won't you open your house to a ghost without a home?
Para X.
What are you afraid of?
Hi, I'm Tim Wagner, Bram Stoker award-winning author.
Hashtag Grave Girls.
This is Katrina Weidman of Destination America's Paranormal Lockdown.
This is Jim Chambers. I'm the author of The Engines of Sacrifice.
This is Jasper Barr, award-winning author of The Final Cut.
And you're listening to What Are You Afraid Of?
What Are You Afraid Of?
To What Are You Afraid Of?
What are you afraid of?
Love it. Fantoxic, please. Fantoxic.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head, the sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
Let me tell you about this guy. He's Chris Roy. He's the author of Shocking Circumstances, Sharp as a Razor, and Her Name is Mercy. He is a published tattoo artist from Rise Tattoo Magazine, ATC, Tattoo Books, the app, and the illustrator of 2 children's books. He was raised in South Mississippi. He lived comfortably with the criminal ventures of his youth until a fistfight in 1999 ended tragically. Since January 2000, he's been serving a life sentence in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. And nowadays he lives his life of crime vicariously. He writes edgy, fast-paced stories. He's hoping to entertain his readers. He's got a lot of experience in the past, and he's turned it down to his art. And when he isn't writing, he's either reading, he's doing tattoos, or he's looking for prospects. He wants to train as a boxer.
Yeah.
And you can find Chris on Twitter at author Chris Roy, and on his Amazon author page, www.amazon.com, Chris-Roy-E- and you can find it there. And for more information on the author, you can visit www.unjustelement.com. I want to warn our audience that it's a little loud over there.
Yeah.
Chris can't really get into a sound studio.
Right.
Hey, Chris, how are you tonight?
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Fox. Hey, Phil. I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Looks like it's going to rain out there.
Yeah.
we seem to have bad luck with storms.
Every time we're recording, it seems that we're in the middle of a storm.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of fun.
Well, not Sunday, though.
Yeah, right. We were okay there.
Or
just
Saturday, man.
Muggy and hot.
Right.
Yeah, kind of like the Mississippi weather in the summer.
Yeah.
I guess. No, not really. All right, so Chris, for our audience, who are you and where are you currently and how did you get there?
Well, I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. As a real young kid, I was the kind that built forts in the woods and swam in the bayous. I did a lot of fishing, chased mullet with cast nets, and shrimping, crabbing, that sort of thing. I got in trouble stealing a few times, and went to juvenile detention center for that. I escaped there, and they sent me to a military boot camp, and that straightened me up for a while. I actually quit stealing stuff, and unfortunately, I got into selling drugs, and that's not really much of a trade-off, but it kept me from stealing things. And I was an average student in school, and nothing special there. I was an overachiever in a lot of other things. Automotive mechanics was something I was really good at, and I grew up working at my uncle's salvage yards. He had a few of them on the coast, and so I became a pretty good mechanic. And my mom kicked me out when I was 17. I got my own place. I was able to afford that, working at a transmission shop full time, and of course I was throwing parties and selling drugs, and so I had the means to take care of myself in that way.
Okay, well that's, yeah.
It wasn't long after that, when I was 18, it wasn't long after I turned 18, as a matter of fact, I got into a fist fight with a guy who I was doing business with. He was also 18. He was the leader of a drug gang in Biloxi called the 211s, a Vietnamese gang. Very serious drug gang, and he and I had a disagreement about money. We had been doing business for a couple of years at that point, and we were somewhat friends. Really, we were two ignorant teenagers that were hot-headed, and the situation got out of control, and the fight, it ended badly. He ended up dying from his injuries. I was charged with murder. I had a public defender trial, and that went really bad, terribly bad. The prosecution ran circles around in the court, and it ended up bad for me. So I've been in Mississippi Department of Corrections since I was 18 years old. I'm 36 now. I'll actually be 37 this month. It's over 18 years.
Wow.
Half my life.
Wow. So you essentially went from a teen drug dealer to a crime and horror author. So can you tell us about that journey and some of the interesting points along the way?
Sure. When I was first locked up in the county jail, my writing skills were pretty much non-existent. I had never done any kind of creative writing whatsoever. I could write a letter, and that's where my skills developed, writing home to family, to friends. And over the years, I got pretty good at it. I started reading a lot. 2007 was when I started writing short stories, actually got into creative writing. And at that point, I felt like, hey, you know what, I could write something. I had read a few hundred books by then, if not more, and written hundreds of letters. I've dog-eared several dictionaries. So I had the ability to put down some pretty decent creative writing. And I started these crime stories that were based on a lot of the things I had done on the street and some things I've done in prison. I was still very criminal-minded back then. And so the characters I created were very immoral. They were their jobs they would do, these scams, these heists. They would plan these really elaborate crimes and carry them out with gut-wrenching joy. I mean, they were just thrilled to death. It was a good thing to go and steal and scam and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So it sensationalized crime. Mm. And over the years, I have evolved as a person. I've gotten away from crime. And at this point, almost completely away from it. It's so hard to get away from crime in this world of criminals. And I've done it. I really have. I feel that writing has saved my life in that respect.
I was thinking about it today. Number one, nobody should judge anyone. But two, we couldn't judge you if you needed to continue doing criminal acts to survive, because it's an entirely different world you're in right now. You know, we can't judge you by the same things we judge ourselves with. Right. You know, it's... and yet, under these circumstances and conditions, you've managed to write some compelling fiction and create art. And from what we were talking earlier, you've helped others in their pursuit in creative fields. How do you write and do all this I mean, we can hear it in the background, in the environment that you're in right now?
Yeah, it's very chaotic. I apologize for the background noise.
No, it's ambiance.
It is. I've learned to block that out over the years. I really pay attention to it now. When I'm talking to somebody on the phone or even on the zone here, and there's people like, God, don't you hear that? I'm like, what? And I look around, there's nothing. I'm just desensitized to
Right.
it, I guess. But
you don't even hear it anymore. Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's been so many times I've been riding in my cell, and I look up and there's a situation happening. Somebody's getting sprayed with mace, or even shot with a shotgun, or somebody's lighting a fire, or getting canine unit over here to shake down, and I just sigh and sit down and continue riding. There'll be a mass of officers on his own shaking down cells, and I'm next, and I'm still sitting there trying to write. It's just another day. I have adopted philosophy over the years, stoicism and war strategy. I love war strategy. I apply that to all areas of my life, especially my fitness training, my boxing training. And I've developed a discipline that carries over into all areas of my life. A lot of the younger guys in here, they see how I carry myself, and they like that. And they are interested in changing their life. They want people to look at them differently, not just as some knucklehead criminal that's on BS all the time. So a lot of them they've made an effort. A lot of these guys, that's all they've been around, all their time, even as youths in the juvenile places, they were around a bunch of knuckleheads, so they act like knuckleheads themselves. They get around somebody that carries himself differently, has a little discipline about themselves, and they like that. So anywhere I go, I've been in several prisons all these years, I start and maintain an exercise group. And most of the guys are interested in learning fitness. And we do CrossFit style training. About half the guys pick up boxing. And some of them become really dedicated, become really good at it. And I don't teach people how to fight to hurt people. It's a discipline. And it's a lifestyle, it's a mindset, and it builds mental toughness and gives you resolve to control your emotions. You develop the discipline to go to war with yourself, to develop mindfulness, to have the presence of mind to not react to situations that
Oh yeah, we hear it.
Yeah, so you you become mindful of things like that. For example, some guys would hear that and get irritated and blow up, and they're just reacting to the situation. Well, my way of looking at things is I want to understand what caused that person to say that, what caused them to do this action. So I take a step back and I'll think to myself, okay, what influenced this behavior? Why did they say that? Why did they do that? Whatever it was that made me mad or whatever, I want to understand what stimulated that behavior. And so having understanding of that helps me cope with the situation. It keeps my emotions in check. And that kind of discipline, like I said, carries over to everything, and including my writing, including my artwork. I've become very proficient in drawing and painting. I say painting, it's not like you think with brushes and acrylics and oils and stuff like that. It's markers. I paint with markers.
Wow.
I'd love to share that with some of you guys. There's actually some available on my website on Just Element.
We'll put that up, if you don't mind. We'll put up some of that on the, we do a website page for every episode where we expand content information, put up links at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com, and we can put some of that artwork up when we do your profile piece.
Yeah,
that'd be
excellent.
That'd be great.
And I think it's great that you're influencing people around you in a positive manner. I think it's wonderful. You did a story that we produced for our episode, Writers of the South, Marsh Madness. What's the story behind that atmospheric tale?
That was a really fun flash short there, based on an area that I used to play in as a child. Like I mentioned before, I grew up around the woods and bayous, and I was very young, swimming in the bayous. I mean, there would be an alligator close by, and I would know that, okay, he's not big enough, he's going to run from me. I was that attuned to nature as a kid in the bayous, and so I'm able to describe that kind of scenery and that setting. And I've spent a lot of time in the bayous at nighttime as well, actually hunting alligator a few times, a handful of times. And other just exploring and boat riding and at night. I've experienced the marshland with deep fogs covering them, and all the animal life involved. I can tell you about all that. Prisoners that have done a lot of time have trouble describing a setting or a place in a free world that they've never been. They can describe prison scenes and write prison stories better than anybody.
Right.
Once they get outside of that, it's difficult. So my settings are usually in the Gulf Coast. They're in areas where I have been. I know where I have memories that I can recall emotions from and put that on the paper.
Yeah.
Right.
Marsh Madness is like that. It's very short, very fast, and it's very familiar to me. And so I was able to do that. The style of writing changed at that point. That was my first piece with this new style I adopted after my mentor, Tom Botter, gave me a lot of advice about my previous works and why they weren't very strong. They probably wouldn't get published. And he told me how to repackage them and told me the things I should be studying and to experiment with some short stories. And I took all of this advice and I went to work. When somebody does that, if I get around a person like that, I shut up and listen. And so I learned a lot from him. And I was, hey, challenge, I'm going to do this. So it didn't sit me down or make me want to quit or anything like that. I doubled up my effort. I went to studying books on writing, and that was my first experiment with this new style I came up. It happened at a time when I was not getting along with my neighbor in the cell next to me, and so I was in a very dark mood, which worked because I was looking for a crime horror genre bender, and so the guy I was having trouble with, his name was Mario. And if you recall, the dog's name in the story was Mario. Well, I had the dog was eaten by the alligator.
So we're going to pause there to play an excerpt of your writing. And this was recorded by David Walton, our wonderful British folk singer. Thank you, David. David is so talented.
Yes, he is.
He is incredible.
Yeah,
I'm so glad he's with the show. And he's out there in England now. And this is called Gift Smack, from Christopher Roy on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. Right now we're doing our authors on episode 89, Imprisoned Spirit, and you can find us on ParaX Radio on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course on all major podcast download services. If we're not on a service, it ain't worth us. And the rate is starting. So this is Gift Smack, www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com.
Gift Smack by Christopher Roy and read by David Walton. Sleep. There was a brief window for this life-recuperating necessity, and damn it, after all she's sacrificed, her kids should respect her enough for a few hours a day, at least. Raising 2 boys on a Kmart salary, alone after their father had packed his shit and left them in a trailer that possibly contained undiscovered species of rats and roaches, and adding a daughter and another failed, often violent relationship to the other obstacles she hurdled to become an RN and owner of a larger, less rodent-populated mobile home. Her tireless efforts elevated her family of 4 out of the trailer trash class. She could hold her head high. And she did, except when she wanted to lay it down. The blissful feeling she enjoyed while wandering the dreamland beach vanished, a rude, familiar sound invading her consciousness. A car door, then 3 more, then a booming stereo pulling in behind them. Car door, car door, car door, car door. Shit. Troy sat up in bed, reached for her glasses. Laughter from several girls peeled through the music that vibrated her house on wheels. Fucking shit. Clack. The window echoed her anger. Hot summer air pouring into her cool room. Blinding sun refracted from her glasses. eyes straining to see and identify exactly who the transgressors were, because she would remember, and they would be paid back, with chore assignments if nothing else. She screamed out of her bedroom window, "Keith! Christopher!" She squinted, shouting harshly, "Every damn day, you never listen. Do I have to tell you and your friends every damn day? Be quiet or leave." She continued her rant, pissed as hell, knowing the teenagers couldn't understand her words now, as they scattered from her driveway, hurrying to pack into cars she didn't recognize. There were far too many to remember, and most stayed only minutes, unless there was a keg party. "Sorry, Miss Troy," one guy said, standing behind an open passenger door, his grin stretched, hands pushing hair over his ears. With marijuana-glossed eyes, he glanced around to see if anyone was looking, smile spreading further over teeth in need of cleaning. He said loudly, uh-huh, and jumped into the suddenly reversing car, barely avoiding injury. The driver, a cheerleader that came to Gulf Park Estates for the attention of boys that treated her and her friends to beer and weed and loud music, and occasional ecstasy, acid, cocaine. Exciting experiences that would scandalize in her part of town. Her bold, adventurous spirit was suddenly gone, however, replaced with a fear that drugs, underground raves and unprotected sex never produced. A pissed-off Miss Troy. "Get the hell out of my yard!" She slammed the window shut, twisted around on her bed, grumbling, "Little shits, hiding shit like I don't know what's going on." Pulled the covers up to her neck, took off her glasses. "I let you drink and smoke in my house this past weekend, fuckers. Think you'll do that here this weekend? Hell no. All of you will be washing, cleaning, mowing and kissing my ass." She calmed down, closed her eyes, drifted off for a minute. Her eyes snapped open, suddenly wide awake. "It's Mother's Day," she said, "and I bet no one remembered." She sighed heavily, sad now. Later that afternoon, Troy got up and went into the kitchen. She looked forward to cooking a meal for her kids before getting ready for work. She had bought ice cream the night before, chocolate and vanilla, and couldn't wait to see the smiles. "Marina, what the shit?" Her daughter, Marina Bean, stood on a chair she had dragged to the refrigerator, reaching into the open freezer, tiny fingers grasping for the carton of chocolate ice cream, inching it towards her. Startled by her mum shouting, she fumbled the carton and it slid clear of the freezer, landing on the floor with a plop, adding to the mess created by the previously dropped vanilla carton. Troy stood there staring, groaning, rubbing her eyes. "I give up," she said. Her eyes moved to take in the scene again. Marina stared at her, face covered in ice cream, stuck between a whine and a pout. She knew what she did was wrong, had known the other dozen times too. "Okay, so fuck dinner and dessert. Marina has eaten, and Keith and Christopher can cook their own damn pork chops." Just then her sons walked into the house, came into the kitchen as if everything was fine. They laughed at Marina, who began her "my brothers are making fun of me" whine. It annoyed Troy to no end. They're laughing, her crying. "You were supposed to be watching her, not out running the streets with your friends and those stupid girls," Troy found herself saying. "And did you remember Mother's Day? Either of you? Don't think so. I bet you remembered when I got to work so your friends can come back." Holding back tears, she swatted Marina on the butt, stood straight, and backhanded the motherfuck out of Keith. Then Christopher. The smacking skin and cries of pain gave her no satisfaction as she stormed off, slamming her bedroom door. A few hours later, house unusually quiet, Troy ventured out of her room, dressed in her whites, nurse scrubs. What she saw made her jerk to a halt. She whispered, "No way." In the kitchen, Marina knelt on the floor, having finished wiping up the last of the spilt ice cream. She sprayed the floor with Pine Sol one last time, wiped it thoroughly, and dropped the paper towel in the trash. Began tying the trash bag, lifted it, carried it outside. Troy followed into the living room, mouth open in disbelief. The living room was spotless, shelves and tables gleaming, floor and furniture freshly cleaned. Her boys stood looking at her with a respect she had never seen before. She knew something significant had taken place, a change in them that would last. And they held presents. Little boxes with bows wrapped in colourful paper. Without a word, she accepted the gifts, placing them in her purse. She would open them at work in front of her friends. "I'm sorry, Mum," Christopher said. "Happy Mother's Day." "Yeah, sorry, Mum," Keith mumbled, sounding sincere for the first time in his life. "Mummy!" Marina ran into Troy's arms, squealing a laugh as she was lifted. They exchanged kisses. "Happy Mother's Day. I love you, Mummy." Troy felt giddy, drunk, as she walked down the steps, her children following. She hugged her purse, feeling the little boxes inside, rocks crunching under her shoes as she walked across the yard to her ride. The dragonfly looked up as Troy approached, its great wings twitching, vibrating the air before lowering to the ground. The huge body flexed, purple, green and yellow glistening along its length. Troy mounted the beast, legs hanging around its head like another set of antennae. Rocks crunching, dust puffing up, the dragonfly's legs pumped once, explosively, wings blurring into a deafening roar, distorting the image of Troy sitting between them. "Fuck going to work," Troy said. Her glasses flashed as she looked up. Suddenly she was above the enormous pines and oaks, circling the maze of bayous next to her home. Her thoughts returned to her kids, and the dragonfly knew what to do. Still standing in the front yard, Keith, Christopher and Marina watched their mum glide down from above the magnolia tree and hover just above them. She nodded once emphatically, the beautiful monster mimicking her movements. The wings blurred faster, banking her flight right past the three of them. Machine gun fast, the wings smacked the three of them, effervescent sparks emanating from their cheeks, open mouths. Troy's laughter, genuine for the first time in weeks, rang out above the woods and bayou, into the evening sky. She squeezed her purse, smiled wide. She already knew what the gifts in the boxes were, and didn't really care to get more frogs for her collection. The wrapped boxes, the cleaning and good behaviour, that's not what made her smile. From here on, her children would listen and abide, never talk back. Because on this Mother's Day, the real present was gift smack.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid of? Horror Paranormal Show Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What are you afraid of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction.
We are ready to scare you.
Para X.
Hi, I'm David Walton, and I drop whatever I'm doing to read whatever Fox and Phil demand of me. My digital, as opposed to ectoplasmic alter ego, is called Brendan Shawland, who regularly plays guitar and sings in a virtual world. Brendan has a website, David doesn't. Bandcamp sales figures would suggest that Brendan's music is decidedly niche. If you want to be in the vanguard of support as Brendan heads towards global domination, just put Brendan Shawland in your favourite search engine, and you'll find his website very close to the top. You'll see what the human looks like, and you can check out the Listen to a Song page to access Brendan's unwillingly private world of creative output.
Caliburn Press, LLC is a Madison, Wisconsin-based publishing company owned and operated by Alan Ledden. Caliburn works with talented writers, artists, editors, and marketers throughout the United States, and you can find their books through their many imprints that include Damnation Books, Eternal Press, Malaferia Press, Ciento Sordida Publishing, and Spiro Publishing. Please visit their website at sites.google.com/site/Caliburn Press LLC/home or Google Caliburn Press to check out their growing list of titles on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other place fine books are sold.
It's time to learn your real talents. Learn what to focus on, then change your perspective. Regain those divine intentions. Be empowered by what life throws at you. They are Psychic Little T and Jennifer Green, Nashville's astrologer. Tune in and discover who you really are and set free your passions. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Then you can follow your passions with renewed energy. May your journey be one of divine wonder to get where you want to be. Come aboard. They are Jennifer Green, Nashville's astrologer, and Psychic Little T, every Thursday night from 7 till 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Para X Radio.
In the future, roving bands of comic book podcasts will savage the wasteland, once known as the Internet. One podcast, the Grolix Podcast, may not be the biggest, may not be the funniest, may not be the most well-spoken. Wait, what was my point again? Oh yes, the Grolix Podcast. Listen to it at grolixpodcast.com. That's GRAWLIX podcast.com.
Hi, this is Tim from Comic Zen. We're located at 301A West Main Street in Lansdale, right near the intersection with Susquehanna Avenue. We have new comics, old comics, graphic novels, including comics made just for kids, action figures, statues, comic supplies, board games, card games, and much more. We have a special order service for both comics and games, and we have a comic subscription service so you don't miss your monthly issues. So come to Comic Zen. Just don't upset the samurai ghost who haunts the store.
And guess what, kiddies? Foxy and Philly will be recording live from Comic Zen in Lansdale every first Friday of the month. So come down and see us at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, not then, because we will be recording live for the Philly Foxy Haunted Spooky Hour on Para X Radio. And bring your ghost stories a little before or a little after, and we'll be glad to collect them at Comic Zen. Fridays, first Fridays, at Comic Zen.
Comic Zen.
In Lansdale, PA. So that was part one of our compelling interview with crime horror author Christopher Roy, recorded on a contraband phone. Can you believe that's incredible? Very, very exciting, kind of. We've never really done anything like that before on the show. We'll be featuring part 2 on our next episode, and more fiction from Chris coming up on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. Chris's book, Her Name is Mercy, is available now, and you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and just look it up under Chris Roy or Her Name is Mercy. And you can find us again on ParaX Radio at 9 p.m. on Friday nights Eastern Standard Time, and on all major podcast download services. We end the show with a short story from an old friend, Mark Slade. He does Blood Noir, the audio drama, on ParaX Radio on Saturday nights at midnight, and also on Anchor. Rhonda Mitchell narrates the short story. Now, this is from Tales of the Undead Supper in Eternal Volume number 2. This is The Auction by Mark Slade on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. Christopher, thank you so much for being on the show, and I think it's one of our best.
Yeah, I agree. That was great. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it, Fox. Thank you, Phil. Really great show. Thank you, guys.
Well, this was episode 89, Imprisoned Spirit with Christopher Roy. I'm T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm Phil Thomas.
Thompson showed up late, sporting his dark blue tie that Joan had bought him. In the 14 years of marriage, she always bought him a tie for his birthday, and a dark blue one for that matter. He stopped at the door of the auction room, fiddled with the tie. "I'm not even sure this tie goes with a light pink shirt," he said and sighed. From the door he could hear the auctioneer's booming voice asking for another bid. No takers. Then the gavel banged and he announced that Smith had won the bid. Thompson made a noise from his throat. "I hope that bastard isn't here." Thompson ran a hand up and down his face. He was tired. If he wasn't out chasing a soul to take to the other side, then he was at auctions all over the world buying souls for the agency. Everyone thinks it's only one spirit in a robe and holding a scythe that's death. Actually, there are several agencies out collecting. And there's 2 things every agent of death hates. One is for a soul recently deceased to run or go missing. 2, for another agent to steal a soul from underneath an agent. The last thing is what Floyd Smith was famous for. He hated him. Even though they both had worked for Axel Agency as partners until Smith started his own agency. Thompson opened the door to the auction room with an audience of 20 or so agents laughing, clapping, some thumbing their nose, and the auctioneer announcing his presence. Thompson waved at the other agents, smiled big as if he were a celebrity. He looked around. Smith wasn't there. "How nice of you to join us, Mr. Thompson. Your seat has only been empty for 3 hours, the auctioneer said through the microphone. "Oh, come on, Gamble," Thompson yelled out. "I only bid on the best souls." Thompson found his seat beside a nervous Calvin, his partner. "Thank God you're here, Steve." Calvin was wearing that horrible Chex Mix suit. The squares of red and white always made Thompson feel nauseous. "You heard what Ford said on Monday. If we don't snag a good soul he can sell, we're out of a job." "You worry too much, Calvin." Thompson pushed his glasses off the tip of his nose, brushed back a strand of his balding head. "We'll get one. By the way, if you lose this job, you can go back to being a gym coach." "Oh, but your wife still thinks you do that, "What do you tell your wife, Steve-O?" Calvin said in a mocking voice. Thompson turned to the auctioneer, tried to pay closer attention to the event. "None of your damn business is what I tell her," Thompson smiled to himself. "Just don't let Smith outbid you," Calvin whispered. "He's not here." Thompson saw the picture of a senator placed on an easel. The agent next to them whispered to them, "Smith was here. He was called away for something urgent." "Oh, great! What luck, Steve-O?" Calvin placed his huge hand on Thompson's shoulder. Thompson jerked away. The man was a giant. Played 3 years as center for the Broncos before blowing out a knee. Now he was an agent of death for the Axel Agency, and not a very good one. He and Thompson has had too many lost souls. They slip away and haunt someone or some building or even an object. Once a deadline to exit the souls to the other side is missed, they are gone for eternity. For the senator, Thompson bid $450. It jumped to 500 credits. Thompson raised his hand, 600 credits. Burke from Denholm Agency bid 1,000 credits. Thompson screamed, 1,500! Calvin jabbed Thompson in the ribs with an elbow. Thompson gave him a look, daggers in his eyes. The agency only gave us 1,800 credits. Back off, Thompson growled. I know what I'm doing. Thompson heard the bidding close at 2,500 credits. His jaw dropped to the floor. What? What happened? He cried out. The bid closed on you while you were talking, one of the agents said. Which of you bastards? Thompson stood, his face beet red with anger. It was Smith, someone said. By phone. Thompson kicked his chair, cursed under his breath. Thompson placed a hand over his worried face. He was done for. He would surely lose his job, or worse, be retired. This young lady was recently deceased, the auctioneer said. As a matter of fact, this last acquirement only died 20 minutes ago. Thompson sat in his chair, barely looked up. He crossed his arms, shook his head. They removed the senator's picture from the easel and replaced it with a beautiful dark-haired woman smiling, as if there were no cares in the world. This is Jenna Smith. Died from a car accident, the auctioneer said. Thompson's eyes lit up. He moved his lips to say the woman's name. That's Smith's wife, he whispered to Calvin. Calvin stopped picking his nose and looked up. Don't do it, Calvin whispered back. Please don't bid on her, Steve-O.
He can't bid on the soul of a loved one, Calvin. If he does, he could be retired. Those are the rules.
Let one of these other jerks do this. For God's sake, Steve, Smith used to be a friend. Thompson wrinkled his nose. Screw him, he said, and topped out the bid. 25,000. The auction room went silent. That was all the credits we were allotted for the year, Steve. Calvin buried his head in his hands. If... Thompson pulled out the company credit card and slammed it on the auction treasurer's desk. I'm going out, Calvin. I want to go out with style. But if you lose this soul, you'll be retired. Calvin shook his head. And I will too. No. Thompson watched the treasurer swipe his card. You are no longer my partner. I'll get the paperwork drawn up after I do this. The treasurer handed Thompson the credit card. With the other hand, he signed for the sale. You won't be retired. Thompson tried to smile, but it turned into a smirk. This was Thompson's justice. He was sick of this business. Taking souls across into the light or the darkness. It wears on a person's mind. Sometimes you even dream about it. He hated Smith so much, he was willing to be retired. Who were they kidding? The company doesn't retire you. They incinerate you, and your soul becomes one of those whispering voices in the winds during a storm. Lousy way to go. Well, if he made up something, showed what a jerk Smith was, how many souls he'd stolen from him, they would understand how letting the man's wife become a lost soul was just cause for revenge. They might let him go and wait for him to die. Then his soul would become a whispering voice. That would never happen. The auction had given him info on where Smith's wife may be. He tried the hospital. No dice. He tried the school where she had taught first grade. No spirit wandering the school's halls. The last place was a summer home on a Maine beach. Thompson arrived just in time for sundown. The sun illuminated the overcast sky, bright reds and oranges and a wild pink and blue beyond the horizon. He saw a woman standing at the edge of the pier, quietly watching the waves dance across the elegant river. She was nearly transparent in her sundress. Her dark hair whipped around her face, courtesy of the rolling wind. "Jenna," Thompson called out to the woman. She turned quickly. There was a crease between her eyes to show her confusion. She looked at Thompson as if she only heard a voice and saw no one. Then she smiled slightly, after recognizing a person belonged to the voice. "Oh," Jenna said, "you're here to take me." "More or less," Thompson nodded. Jenna laughed. Men are always so vague. She looked at him. I was hoping I could get a chance to say goodbye to Floyd. Did you love your husband? Thompson approached her cautiously. If he ran to her, she might jump into the river. But maybe he wanted her to. He couldn't make up his mind. Yes, she said without hesitation. If Thompson let her go, she would haunt Smith until he died. Would you like to go for a walk? Thompson put out his hand. Jenna bit her lip, reached out for Thompson. From a distance, a voice called out for her. She pulled back her hand. Thompson turned, saw it was Smith running up the pier. Jenna, no! Don't take his hand! He was coming up fast, waving his hands. Please, Jenna! I'll take her across, Thompson, you bastard! Jenna stepped backwards. All she saw was a blur of a body coming towards her and a muffled voice screaming at her. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. Fear ran across her face. Jenna turned toward the waves crashing against the pier. Stay back, Smith! What are you doing? You know you'll scare her away! No sooner had Thompson caught Smith by the arms, Jenna was gone. The current had taken her, enveloped her in its white underbelly. Smith and Thompson stood, both at a loss for words. Smith burst into tears. Thompson closed his eyes, let go of Smith. Thompson walked away.
All of you will be washing, cleaning, mowing, and kissing my ass.
T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard, and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Books. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the next Stargate anthology from MGM and Fandemonium Books, Points of Origin. Fox is an active member of the Horror Writers Association, and he's had published hundreds of short stories and articles. His motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time.
Phil Thomas is an author and screenwriter from the suburbs of Philadelphia. His screenplays have been produced into feature films False Face and Always from Darkness, and are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand. His short films can be viewed on his YouTube channel, Film Zero Presents. He is a member of the International Association of Professional Writers and Editors, and he currently writes for Cultured Vultures, Game Skinny, and BloodyDisgusting.com. His first novel, The Poe Predicament, is being published in 2018 by Caliburn Press.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.